let's look deeper into Warrior 3. So Warrior 3 is a really great energizing pose that helps to improve our balance and the strength all along the back of the body. So the first thing we want to think of in Warrior 3 is our contact with the ground, our base. We want to be as stable as possible. So we have one point of contact with the ground, and that's the one foot that remains down. So let's take our left foot in this instance. We really want to make sure, just like when our hands are down, that our toes are spread wide and that we're pressing down evenly throughout all four corners of the foot or across the entire base of the foot. And just like with our hands when we're balancing a little bit, sometimes we might have to shift our weight back and forth and use our toes to kind of press us around and make sure that we're staying stable. So try to remember to remain active through that grounded foot. A slight bend in that knee is okay. And we're going to make sure that we're staying really, really strong through this grounded leg all the way up to the glute. Now the goal in Warrior 3 is to have that floating leg or that back leg to become parallel to the mat, our hips to remain squared to the floor, our arms to float forward, biceps next to our ears, and our drishti or our gaze to remain down. We want to find that nice straight line from the tips of our fingers to our heel or the tips of our toes. Now in Warrior 3, we want to flex that extended leg. So our foot can remain flexed, toes pointing down. And I actually recommend this, particularly if you find it difficult to keep your hips squared off to the floor. If we're not flexing that foot, toes pointing down, we find a really strong point through the toes, keeping that foot really engaged. So we're going to begin with our left foot down, spreading the toes wide, trying to find even pressure across the base of the foot. I'm going to keep a very slight bend in my knee here as I engage the muscles in the grounded leg. Floating my right foot, I'm going to begin to tilt down, and your arms can be the last thing that extends. So we're going to fold from the hips, and I'm going to keep my toes pointing down. As I mentioned, this makes it a lot easier to keep your hips squared down to the mat. And once I feel I'm in a parallel position, I can take my arms forward, and I'm going to gaze down or just slightly ahead of me. Now I'm really squeezing through the back of my body, and I'm really engaging the core, navel tucked in. I'm feeling a nice wrap around my ribs, and that grounded leg is doing so much work. Something to look out for is that hip opening up. I've mentioned it a couple of times. We really want to make sure that that's something that we're focusing on strongly here, is keeping that hip squared off to the mat. And once we're here, if you want to point through those toes, you can. But this is something that tends to happen here. We tend to open up a little bit through the hips. So really, really making sure that we're focusing on squaring off here. If you're a very beginner, or if you find Warrior 3 particularly difficult, we can begin just by simply working on the balance of it all. So trying to remain in proper alignment, keeping the hips squared off to the front, folding from, in this instance here, the left hip fold. Arms can stay up or at your sides as you just begin to fold, and then stop where you feel like that's where you can hold it. Arms can extend up here, and then over time work to fold deeper and deeper, eventually coming to parallel. A great way to modify Warrior 3 while still keeping our arms extended forward is to use a wall, hands pressing up against it, or you can use the back of a chair. So in this case, you can begin as you normally would, and then work to steady yourself once you're in position. Or you can begin with your hands on the chair and extend the leg back. Same thing with the wall. And finally, another way that we can modify Warrior 3 is by using blocks, positioning them down. And in this case, our arms would not be extended forward. We're going to be keeping them down and really focusing on the alignment through the lower part of the body and keeping the core engaged. So So in this instance here, position the blocks shoulder width apart and focus on keeping the hips squared off to the mat. And I'm pressing as tall as I can through my arms here, trying to get my upper body as parallel to the mat as I can.